Hey everyone, let's talk about some Leafs trade rumors, specifically a signing rumor. Jonathan Toews linked to the Leafs by Frank Seravalli. It looks like Jonathan Toews is trying to make an NHL comeback. Leafs are named as a team, the Jets, I think Avalanche, there's been a few other teams that maybe he looks at, but you know what? I think at his age, Jonathan Toews, if he's in the right fitness, you never know as a fourth line center. Like, he's a guy, obviously, we know the Cups, we know all the situations, so let's keep an eye on it. I'm not going to put too much stock in it, and that's nothing against Seravalli. It's just that we'll see if he can do it, and if he does it, I would say he's probably not much more than a fourth or maybe third liner. But, hey, for the Leafs, if they were going to trade David Kampf, maybe Toews is that veteran presence between Lorentz and Dewar, and maybe some key faceoff wins, right, in the defensive zone. So, and then it would be a lot cheaper. It'd probably be league minimum versus what Kampf makes, which is over $2 million. But looking at some other options for the Leafs in the third line center, that seems like the biggest fit right now, or at least need. Wilson, Rylander, looking at Oakville native Scott Laughton. So my comment is, I wonder if Robertson, Kampf, and a second isn't enough for Laughton. You look at it, Laughton had a 4-goal game. So you take away that 4-goal game, which you don't, but you do in the bigger picture. And Robertson's got more, I would say, games where he's contributing goals, right? So I think when you look at the Flyers and what they're trying to accomplish in longer term, growing with younger guys like Mitch Koff and Bobby Brink, Cam York, go down the list, I think the Flyers could look at a Robertson as a guy on the rise. You get a second-round pick as well. Kampf is a good third, fourth line center for them. And I think Laughton is in the last part of his prime where the Flyers maybe are not ready and the Leafs are. So I think Laughton would be a perfect fit for the Leafs this year and next. He's only $3 million cap hit. It makes a lot of sense. Again, Oakville native from here. I think it makes sense to go after Laughton. And if this is the price tag, honestly, I'm doing it. Like, I'm high on Robertson still to the point where he's going to be a 20-goal guy in a full season. So make that as you want, but I think the Leafs want playoff performance and playoff style, and Laughton is that. So you can't keep hoarding picks. You're not going to go anywhere. The Leafs don't have many picks, but if you trade the second that you got from Florida, because at the draft last year, they traded their second to push it this year, it makes sense to try to get an asset out of it, and Laughton has team control into next year, and that's what the Leafs are looking for. The other conversation is JeanGabriel Pageau. I talked about it in the other video, so a lot of people are putting that out there right now. Pageau to the Leafs. The Islanders would have to retain 50% to make it worth Toronto's while at least, and also fit into the cap picture. I also think if the Leafs are giving up assets for Pageau, they probably won't go after anything bigger than that. Because I think Pageau's a guy that can really fit into the top six if need be. Like, we've seen him in the top six for the Islanders, but at the same time, he's that perfect third-line center. And we've seen him step up in the playoffs, whether it's for the Islanders or back when he was with the Sens. He's a playoff performer. He steps up when it matters, and that's what the Leafs need. So also being a right-shot center is valuable on this team, being that your two top centers, Tavares and Matthews, are left shot. So that's something to consider for Toronto as well when you're looking at that second or third line center. Pageau kind of fits a lot of those needs, and maybe he looks at an extension with the team. But Brock Nelson also being talked about with Toronto. Again, it depends on how much you're giving up. If you're giving up this for Brock Nelson and he's a rental, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. If it's a second and maybe Robertson in another piece, maybe it makes sense. So going back to the Laughton situation, again, a first-round pick, that's a lot to give up. If you're Toronto, do you do it because of the term? And if the Flyers would retain cap on that too, I would say I'd only do that if maybe Kampf is going back to the Flyers. I know you're in this situation, you're trying to dump him somewhere else, and then maybe the Leafs get Morgan Frost. But also for the defense targets, I mean, David Savard is an interesting one. I also wonder if they look at teams where they can pull like both. So a defense and a third or second line center. So there's a lot of scenarios out there. Like the Islanders are one of them for other teams. Like, I don't think the Leafs would be getting a Noah Dobson, but for a team like Vancouver to get that combination of a Brock Nelson, Dobson, that makes sense. Maybe the Leafs look somewhere else for a lower key version of that. Like, I don't know if the Leafs Montreal trade ever happens again in recent memory, but you know what? Well, it happened. It happened with Plekanec. I'm just saying, does it happen again in the future here? I don't know. I think the Montreal one makes sense in terms of the players. Like, it'd be Jake Evans and David Savard, or Christian Dvorak and David Savard. Of course, there'd have to be retention. And again, the Kampf Yarncrow contracts would have to be up in the air if Yarncrow's coming off LTIR. But I mean, Christian Dvorak, I've talked about it before because he was a teammate with Mitch Marner in the London Knights. Again, does Montreal and Toronto make a trade again together? I'm not sure. But again, similar situation. I will say though, if there was a scenario where this trade was a possibility, I would make this every day of the week, no questions asked. If you could get Bo and Byrum from Buffalo, in Toronto's perspective, I would 100% trade a first, a second, Timmins, Steves, even throw Robertson in there. I would do it. I'm very high on Byrum. I think the thing with Buffalo just hasn't worked out. They've been in a bad rut, probably bad internal culture. I think Byrum in Toronto's system, with how it's working right now, would be electric. And again, would Riley and Byrum be able to figure it out? I'm not sure. Again, I think if they were to get a guy like Byrum, then the Riley trade talk even gets louder. So that makes me a bit nervous, but I'm pretty high on Byrum. And maybe that means you could do a top four of Riley, Tanev, Byrum, McCabe. That would be really interesting because I think McCabe, as good as he's been on the left side with Tanev, I think he could shift to the right. And I mean, that's such a balanced top six. You have Riley, Tanev, Byrum, McCabe, Benoit, OEL. Oh my, that would be unreal. So something like this popped up, sure. But again, talking about the third line centers that are out there, Laughton, Pageau, I mean, even Morgan Frost from the Flyers as well. Keep an eye on that. But I would say Pageau and Laughton are very realistic. Nelson's a stretch. Past that, there's other options. Like I said, I mentioned a Jake Evans. Keep an eye on Jonathan Toews for a fourth line center spot. But I do think, depending on what kind of cap hit you're bringing in, David Kampf might have to be on the way out. And as great as the third line's been with Bobby McMahon, Domi, and Robertson, also keep an eye on that. If they do go after another third line guy, third line center, middle six guy, there's a chance Robertson's on the way out for some value. Because frankly, I mean, he's been really good the last few weeks on that third line and showing more of his value in terms of scoring too. So thank you so much, guys. Hit that subscribe button, like, notification bell, all that good stuff. We will see you on the next video. And yeah, make sure you follow on X. I also post the links there, but the notification bell on YouTube works too. So talk soon. Peace.